thanks to Jeff and Zoe for all this together. So I thought I'd read some poems which are old, white, male, heterosexual texts. How refreshing! Jeff mentioned that I'd done some versions of Petrarch's sonnets, Experience, from which I've recently recovered. But I kind of got obsessed with that whole thing, and so I've done these versions of Cavalcanti, who's actually a much more interesting poet, as I'm sure you know. And so I'm just going to read 9 poems by Cavalcanti. They're not very tight in terms of translation or accuracy. Vi prego voi che di dolor parlate. I know you've all had a lot on your minds, but I thought you might like to take a break from your issues to concentrate on mine, which include dry rot and whistling gaskets and an ache in the gut that's calling out for Dynarod. I am these sensations of someone else's knuckles just behind my eyeballs, which is making it tricky to gaze reflectively upon the world or freshen up the stale pits of my mind. And that's a shame, because I'd seen some sights and enjoyed a stunning range of inputs which had made my mind feel like a fountain playing incessantly throughout the nights of a small piazza in the ghetto, instead of one of those tiny red lights on the extension lead under the desk. I've reached that stage when glimpses of justice and gorgeousness, such as fresh leaf on beach, or any member of the Cod family, proper policy, her face and music, sending these little ripples through the wine, hurt my eyes and render me rickety, knowing their value and their fragility. Okay, the second poem is actually Cavalcanti's 8th, as far as we know. We have these 52 poems have come down to us from Cavalcanti. This is a sonnet. It's quite a famous sonnet in which he talks in an extraordinary way about how, although it's very much within the convention of unrequited love and that whole troubadour kind of nonsense, he talks about it in an extraordinary way. He talks about how this unrequited love is making him feel inhuman, and as if his head is made of brass and his body is made of bits of wood, and it's just not flesh and blood. Tu mai si piena di dolor la mente. The worst thing about being a Dalek is how remote you feel from tender flesh, and how every sexual position makes you feel more like a fucking bollard. It's also weird and inconceivable that the person strolling past the butcher's with a bag clogged with Asda ready meals is set for a night of supple passion, while you stand wheel-clamped by your tinny self and she's out dancing through the neighbourhood, taking Zumba styling through the city that never sleeps and never really wakes. I follow the stars and one-way systems all the way to Ebbsfleet International. Can you hear me okay? Poi che ti toglie cor conven che i porti, this is number 11. She reposed behind me with such posture. Accomplished cellist that she was, she drew a sword across and deep into my throat, my heavy head relaxed onto her lap. And welcome to the world of Baroque art, Mr. Cavalcanti, welcome to the cabaret of bodily effusions and horrified stares towards the next stage, where I knock up this nativity set in which the neighbours and local fauna are encouraged to pause and meditate upon my vaguely impotent feelings, while we ignore my threads in your Velcro, your finer hairs still stuck between my teeth. Perché non furono a me gli occhi dispenti? Numero 12. Sending coded postcards to my lady of awkward compartmentalizations. Now that her pole dancing days are over and her interest in art has begun, here's one of me in Saint Sebastian, and here's one of my cock in the Bocca della Verità, and this is the end of yet another phase of hopelessness. Not that it hasn't had its miracles, its commas of starlight in the wine glass, the morning moving down her naked back, her fists full of my ordinary hair. I devote the rest of my life to these bucatini alla matriciana. Voi che per gli occhi miei passaste il cuore. 13. Contains additional material for reading groups and cartons of ashes. Just go. Diminutive autoscopy. Fast rewind to the start of the tunnel, beyond departments of psychophysics and the carbonized traces of tinder. She drove through my hedge and into the lounge, creating this derelict extension, interspersed with irregular sections, rafters and yells, draft plasterboard and stars, rooms slashed in human hide and toxic air, made inexplicably invisible to most members of the neighborhood watch. She shone among the expats of Rapallo. 16. A me stesso di me pietà venne. And still my cogs emit this high-pitched whine, although they never mesh with the planet's transmission systems or anyone else. Portrait of the artist as a duff clutch. So I'm stuck between vibrating mayhem and a car that's never heading down the road. Christ, it's like I've got Elmore James playing right in the tips of each of my fingers, with none of the sound ever getting out through the skin, or sudsy marigold gloves, sink, kitchen, isolated house or town. It's already the end of whatever they're calling this period nowadays. And what you hear here is just an echo. 17. Se io prego questa donna che pietate. I think, therefore, I am feeling thoughtful, and yet too inattentive to complete this nasty cross-stitch picture of the Queen, or paint my charity shop figurine of possibly a bear or hedgehog sat on its cold hindquarters drinking nothing from a wide bowl. It might be a raccoon. Well, talk about cold fucking pastoral. That old autumn feast of Dionysus got really out of hand again last year, and still they're finding celebrants in trees, ponds, and the skip in which I'm dreaming of Tiepolo in the Labia Palace. Oh, how I miss eating you between meals. 25. Posso degli occhi miei novella dire. Well, looky here. It's the shock of the new. Much like the schlock of the old, recycled into fresh articulations of desire. So where the fuck does all this leave us now, with our colour-coded interdental prongs and maladjusted memory cards and HSBC voiceover artists sticking fists at wooden politicians to take the lead in steering modern art, learning, health, and the prospects of our love, proffer spectacular encouragement to gargle and rock with whiskey and fire, gnaw on each of the safety rails and chew through every stanchion of the landing stage. I like a salad as much as the next pounder. But this time I'm engulfing trees, rafters, and the roof of my own mouth. Press send to flick this language through the sky in the hope it sticks to some equipment to which she may remember the password and login details. She could read it once, then delete it forever the same way she cancelled our multicoloured futures and left me with this draft in black and white. And I'll finish with, I suppose there's Cavalcanti's most famous poem, Donna Mi Prega. Now the lady makes me think about love's pitbull attacks on the soul's soft tissues, and those fatal core reactor meltdowns and deep immunity to metaphor. It's tricky thinking through these things in ink as love demands we loosen up our grip on pre-existing modes of consciousness, affiliation and self-confidence. Otherwise we stand no chance of melting, flowing into fresh configurations in response to love's accommodations of feral power, rerouted through refined reformulations of specific lips in actual laps tomorrow evening. So, what about the inner baklava? Comprising thousands of translucent veils, crushed nuts, honey dust experiences, weird terms, softly brushed with olive oil and clarified, I can't believe I haven't come yet, her hair against the troubled light, trembling phone calls right across the table towards the rest of the world. Love becomes a bustling mental impulse with overactive elbows, forever nudging past tutti and barging its way to the front of any cure crowd to snatch the finest view of what's about to happen, which is nothing short of miraculous. How love is made of nothing we feel, yet marble knuckles kneading your most vulnerable hollows, articles and raw protuberances into a species of blue slush puppy. Or one of the ghostly breakdown trucks of the apocalypse, towing you at speed the wrong way through a maze of one-way streets by night, so you can barely stay on board that dilapidated unicycle. It's not how they portrayed it in the films, with all those unpolluted beaches or luminous farm-free meadows without snakes, or hip umber bookshops in Manhattan. Love enjoys an absence of perspective. Well, enjoys in the sense of despairs at. A heady blend of claustrophobia, seasickness and agoraphobia are the least disagreeable symptoms, alongside earache in the genitals, dizziness and backache down the front. You keep receiving mental messages from poets and energy companies, emergency services and phantoms, trees and insects send you final demands. The stars ask for your help with a survey. The Pope calls to say, if you eat those eels, you're bound to die. Sorry, wrong number. So, love carves out an empty space which hates to be refilled by interference waves to vast notions and everyday persons do what they can to keep this thing alive through radio dedications and a goodwill, a little card or bloom, a bottle of Prosecco, or on this occasion a thoughtful Grosso di Montefalco has moistened the tablecloth between us. And dripped on these scribbles in the notebook, lending a welcome chromaticism to the usual black and white deceptions, which established almost every action in our lives throughout the run-up to today. Off you go, young poem, without dragging a heavy tale of clever dickery. Just leave, without the usual excuses. Drive on along anonymous ring roads. Let's stop now, while the bar is still open. Thank you.